Hello, my name is Andrew Bartholomew. I'm part of the Digimarc marketing team, and I'm chatting with my colleague, Bill Baer. He's the Digimarc's Global Technical Business Development Director. We are recording this discussion in September, which incidentally is National Food Safety Education Month. So what better time to discuss this important topic with someone who knows it quite well. And Bill, let's start with a little context. It's hard to talk about food safety without touching on product recalls. So can you give us a sense for how big of a problem this is for the industry?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. There are a lot of industry analysts out there quantifying the size of the recall problem, so I won't attempt to duplicate their efforts, but I think there's a few statistics that really have stood out to me, which summarize the size of the recall problem at a high level, and especially specific to food. The first focuses on the cost of a recall to a brand. The recall costs are typically broken down into two categories, direct and indirect costs, where the direct costs are things that are expenses easily connected to the recall itself. Examples of this include the notification process, the customer reimbursement, maybe product retrieval and storage, destruction. And then on the indirect side, the expenses extend beyond the recall. Those are things including litigation, impact on market value, or your brand or your industry reputation. The Grocery Manufacturers Association had a study which concluded the average recall's direct cost was in the area of $10 million. And the average recall's indirect cost was $19 million. So I kind of look at this as an iceberg where the larger the cost is the indirect costs that you continue to feel on a long-term basis. But ultimately, the total cost there is almost $30 million between the two. So I thought that was really profound. And we also know that the cost to the US food industry related to recalls is roughly $7 billion annually. So that's pretty substantial. The second statistic focuses on the cost to society, where the CDC estimates that foodborne diseases sicken 1 in 6 Americans annually, resulting in roughly 128,000 hospitalizations and 3,000 deaths. Obviously, one death is too many, but I thought that was pretty profound as the impact of this on our society at large. So, although both of these statistics are specific to the United States, we understand in talking with our brethren in other markets that the similar statistics and trends exist elsewhere. So under continued consumer pressure, regulatory agencies have or are in process of placing additional regulations and enforcement policies that are really driving related to food safety. And we see these efforts really illustrating the prioritization consumers have around this critical subject.
Wow, those are certainly some eye-opening statistics there. Can you walk us through, Bill, how food manufacturers would typically handle a recall incident?
Sure. I mean, it can be a fairly long and complex process. So in the interest of time, I'll talk about how a couple of key areas are handled. But this is handled differently depending on country. But for the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA for short, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture, they're responsible for really regulating the U.S. food supply, and it all starts with them. The FDA is responsible for most of the domestic and imported goods, whereas the USDA is focused on meat and poultry and some egg products. There are a number of ways a company can become aware of a potential recall, including inspections by a regulatory body, failed testing through sampling programs, maybe self-inspection, and of course the worst case where it's actually causing illness in the public sector. Regardless of the identification method, the recall process involves defining a recall strategy. And this is kind of where I'd like to focus this conversation on, because early on in that recall process, the company submits this recall strategy to the FDA, or in this case, the US Department of Agriculture if it's meat. This strategy should include the depth of the recall, including the product range, the markets inclusive of the wholesalers, retailers, or consumers. It's at this point that access to complete, accurate, and timely traceability data is critical to decision-making and outbound recall communication. When traceability information is absent or the granularity is too coarse, it limits a company and a regulator's effectiveness. So For example, a company that might need to play it safe and recall more products than they actually required because the exact origin may be unknown. Likewise, too small of a scope might be chosen, thereby elongating the duration and costs of the recall and adding that additional risk to the public. Everything supply chain, I always kind of quote them because I think they have a great quote here, and it says, if supply chain had an arch enemy, it would be called bad communication. And I think this is really true among recalls, where bad data and lack of standards can spell poor analytics, which translates to bad business intelligence and ultimately uninformed decision making. My customers who've gone through recalls have often told me that access to timely and accurate and complete data is absolutely critical during these really strenuous, tense times of going through the recalls and building that recall strategy. They often tell me they didn't appreciate the complexity of their supply chains until they actually had to go through a recall.
So Bill, now that we have some helpful context about the scope of the recall problem and some information about the processes involved when these events occur, how can Digimarc help in these cases?
Absolutely. And I think the key here is that whether you're a company with an existing traceability solution or seeking one for the first time, Digimarc solution can help drive you towards more accurate, timely, and complete supply chain data. We, at our heart, are a software company which encode, quality control, and decode a robust 2D data carrier symbology. That data carrier can be applied on a wide array of packaging and shipping materials, including labels, corrugate, pallets, items, and it enables 4 really unique benefits. First, our customers report up to 64% less time spent manually scanning Digimarc codes versus competing 1D and 2D symbologies like QR and data matrix codes. This is very important to scenarios where you have a great deal of human-based scanning involved, where you might have handhelds out at farms or warehouses and logistical operations. Second, customers reported up to 99% first pass read rates on when scanning Digimarc codes as compared to 70 to 80% read rates on packaging materials using QR and data matrix codes. Third, our business partners like Matthew Marking Systems have reported to us that up to 69% that we used up to 69% less ink than other codes like GS128, data matrix and QR codes again. This is relevant to use cases where you're putting an industrial inkjet onto potentially a corrugate box or a case or some other type of packaging materials and pallets. Cost is king, right? And when you can apply it at a cheaper cost, you can use those savings elsewhere. Lastly, the fourth and last item is Digimarc code is repeated and oftentimes imperceptible to the untrained eye, which allows us to be placed on a number of different locations on packaging, including the sides, the tops, and even the front. And this flexibility further enhances the speed and first pass read rates I mentioned above. In addition, just a few side notes, Digimarc's payload supports the GS1 standards, so our code is well suited for interoperability. In addition, Digimarc is partnering with IoT management platforms like Everything to enable the capture, management, and analytics related to scanned Digimarc payloads. This pre-integrated platform offers an optimized scanning environment coupled with a scalable and interoperability data management platform that delivers our customers the timely, accurate, and complete information they need to manage their recall process.
Thanks, Bill, for all that great information. Bill Baer is Digimarc's Global Technical Business Development Director, and we spoke today about food safety, recalls, and how Digimarc can help. You can learn more about this topic and how Digimarc can address the food recall challenge by visiting our website. That's digimarc.com/traceability, digimarc.com/traceability. We also encourage you to reach out if you would like to speak directly to Bill or another member of our sales team. The email address to reach them is sales@digimarc.com. You can also go to our website and submit a contact form if that's easier. That concludes our discussion today. Thanks everyone for watching, and take care.